Welcome to this bonus episode of It's Called Soccer. Today we catch up with the US women's national team legend, Brandi Chastain. Gary and I had a conversation with her a few weeks ago in New York City at Carragher's bar that Gary had given a makeover to. Gary, we are back in Carragher's, but it looks a bit different, a little bit of a makeover.
The profits have just gone up. The clientele have improved. And it's now called Neville's.
You've got the decorators in.
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I have to say that I was quite jealous actually last time when I got to New York, and I thought I've heard this thing like Carragher's got a bar. I'm thinking, no, he can't really have a bar, but he has.
Yeah. Have you not got one?
No, and now we have. You see. So what happens is you move in. You know what I mean. Carragher sleeps. He's over in wherever he's doing. He's watching marathons. He's doing things in England and sleeping on the job. And we've moved in and we've taken over. And all of a sudden, this bar's future looks rosy.
So what? This shirt? Signed by you. What year was that?
I think that was 90. That was 99, was it? Or was it 95, 96? How was it mixed up with this one? Have a look. Let's have a look. Was that 99? No, 95, 96.
What it says on the what was this on the sleeve?
Oh, 98, 99. Champions. It's 98, 99.
And below that?
That's actually a picture of Manchester United legends. I'm actually on it. I am on it. But I don't know if I've made it because you got George Best and Ronaldo on there and Keane. I don't know why I'm on this one. So it's a Manchester United legends picture. Yeah, it's nice.
And we've had all these flags from the United supporters clubs in New York.
Yeah, United are big over here. Came over here, I think it was early 2000s for the first time with United.
Yeah.
And it was really when sort of the club started to focus on coming to America. Because we always used to go to Asia or Africa or parts of Europe, and then we started to come into the US and sort of been coming on tours ever since. But yeah, it's nice to see the influence of United. This
shirt with the funny little ties.
Yeah, that was 94, 95.
Who's on the back of that one? Go and have a look.
That's got to be Roy Keane on it. That always reminds me of Cantona or Keane, that one, that shirt.
Yeah, it's the strings, the draw strings, yeah. Early 90s.
There you
Cantona.
Go. Cantona.
Signed.
I mean, seriously.
So did you bring all these from home?
Yeah. No. No, these guys over here, the massive United supporters clubs over here. Yeah.
I think it's definitely had a facelift.
Yeah. Is there a Crystal Palace supporters club over here?
That shadow of a doubt in every city. There may not be a bar.
Are you the president?
Should be. In every city. We are here today explaining the Caps, Bay FC, which is Brandi Chastain's club, part owner, which we will get to.
Yeah, co-founder.
Co-founder. The wonderful Brandi Chastain has joined us today. Double World Cup winner, 2 Olympic gold medals as part of the USA women's team. So lovely to have you on the podcast here in New York at Neville's Bar.
This is quite a transformation. I've been in this bar a few times actually.
Why?
To watch Copa America.
Why would you come to Carragher's? You've got class. Yeah. You've got style. You know what I mean?
I was near here. It was the nearest one to where
the only place you could have basically, yeah.
Well, it's now Neville's, and we're gonna talk about Bay FC because it's a really interesting part of your journey, Brandi. But your journey encapsulates so many incredible moments, which we're going to touch on. But let's take you back to when you were a little girl growing up in the United States. Soccer, football. How did you get to it? How did it find you? Tell us about your childhood as a player.
Well, the first thing you would need to know is that I grew up in Northern California, San Jose, and I love sports right away. Being physical was probably the thing that got me the most excited. It brought me the most joy. And my grandfather loved golf, so I listened to stories about golfers, and he would take me to Pebble Beach, and my mother loved tennis, so I knew Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert, and neither one of those things were dirty and physical enough for me. So it just so happened that soccer came to my neighborhood when I was about 7.5. And so we signed up.
When you say soccer came to your neighborhood, what do you mean?
Somebody created a league and said we're going to have organized soccer. We didn't know anything about it. Nothing. No, my parents didn't know anything about it.
Was it an English person that came to your neighborhood?
I don't remember that actually. It felt like a neighborhood thing. It was very low level, like very recreational. My father was my coach, and he didn't know anything about soccer. He'd never even seen a match before. And so He was a Marine, so we knew push-ups, sit-ups, and run in 2 very organized lines. But family was really the premise for this environment. But I always thought I'd be an American football player, to be honest with you, because I loved playing American football. I loved, the contact that football had. And but then what ended up happening in 1970, in the mid to late-ish 70s, George Best came to San Jose Earthquakes, and that changed my life. And I watched him, and I was glued to my seat. I could not take my eyes off of him. And he just danced around the field, and the ball was stuck to his foot, and he just looked like he made it look so effortless and beautiful, and I was overwhelmed, and I just thought, I'm going to do that.
So I never connected the fact that basically George Best coming to San Jose was the reason that you sort of became inspired by football.
Yeah, it just showed it in this different light. Back in the NASL, they only had to have 2 Americans playing. So there was a lot of international players that I had the luxury of watching. I mean, that was Pelé, Beckenbauer, Mueller. I mean, these are players that were world-class players. And I fell in love. I just wanted to do that. And I went to a soccer camp, and there was 350 boys and 4 girls. And I was like, I am in this. I am going to compete against all of them, and I'm going to crush them. And then we got to play at the halftime. And I scored a goal, and the crowd cheered, and I was like...
Halftime in the actual
In the
game.
actual stadium.
Stadium, yeah.
And it was...
And how old were you at that point?
I was maybe 10.
And did you know there was a pathway? Was there a pathway at that point?
No. No, this is, the first time we met, the light bulb went off for me. I was sitting on a panel with you, Tom Brady, Serena Williams, Paul Gasol, Marc Messier. I mean, these are legends in their sport. Multiple trophy winners, unbelievable, right? The best of the best. And I thought, I'm like the black sheep. Because I say that only because it hit me really hard. I grew up without a path. I grew up without an established league. I was a part of the group that made that happen. And so when I think about Bay FC today, I mean, it's very emotional for me. And this is the 3rd iteration of women's professional soccer football in our country. And I think about me as a young kid watching George Best. The girls and boys, it doesn't have to be girls only. It's just the kids that come to our stadium will be exposed to players from around the world and their homegrown players, and they will be as impacted as I was. And that is the best gift that this opportunity has given to me. Yeah, just changing people's lives.
That's incredible, because I grew up obviously listening to my dad and my granddad talk about watching George Best at Manchester United, and I never obviously watched George Best play. I started sort of watching United after he'd left. But did he have it wouldn't have been just you that he would have had impact, did he have a major impact on young people, but just generally on the game around that time?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, obviously he was the centerpiece and the focal point for the San Jose Earthquakes, just because of what he had done in his career previously, and so there was a lot of attention. I remember waiting for hours at the locker room, just waiting for a picture or an autograph, which I never got. No.
Oh, no.
I got one photo, but remember, this is in the non-digital age, so someone had to snap a picture hoping that you get, I literally think I had a quarter of my face and part of his hair. So, but that was a big thing for me. And again, football means so much to me on so many levels for so many reasons that, it's my journey, it's my destiny to make sure that every single person that comes to the stadium feels like they had a personal experience, and that it could be the only time. Right, that I meet them or they meet our players, and we better do the best job possible.
Back around that time, a little bit before maybe, so obviously you're aware that in England women were banned from playing football for a long time. My mum got kicked out of the boys football team at school, and she's actually got there's a press cutting of it, a media cutting of it, where basically it made quite big controversial news around the time in the local paper. How were you treated when you were one of 4? And how were the coaching staff? How were the other players, the boys that were in there, sort of with the 3? Well, you and the 3 others that basically turned up for that sort of that camp.
Yeah, very interesting question, and I think really relevant for me, because there was not this overt displeasure for us being there, but kind of the side talk, right? You know, we would have a skit night, and they did a really not so nice skit, and I think I was too young to understand it at the time, but now that I look back, I was like, wow, that was really not okay, and none of the male staff, it was all male staff, did anything about it. And so I think nobody really knew how to navigate the space.
What was the skit night? Talk us through it.
Like a sketch.
Yeah, like
what was the sketch though? What was the sketch that would say?
I
What, actually mocking or?
Yeah, like, you know, like defaming women, just like
taking the mickey.
Playing football or just generally?
Generally.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I think, you know, not right or wrong, good or bad, at the time, you know, women in sports did not have its place as it does now. Like the roots were not set, and so it wasn't okay, and it would never be tolerated now. And I'm hoping, not even thought about being done, but so I felt like that's where my competitiveness really got its spark. But the gentleman who was running the camp became one of my mentors, and he knew I was better than those kids. And so he put me in the middle of it all. Yeah. And he let me just be as wild as I was. I was wild. Like I would crush I was like Gary Neville, you know. Like I would crush anybody that would come in my area.
You're underselling yourself there.
But you know what I'm saying? Like that when I watch you play, like I feel like there's this, like you're never going to beat me, and I will never make it easy on you. And you're going to feel it at the end of the day. You're going to know you met me.
But you would have needed that determination more to combat the things that you were having to cope with, just in terms of not just the actual playing in that game, but also the attitudes that would seem to exist against you.
But I'll say, here's what I've found so fascinating about the experiences that I've had through sport and soccer specifically, is that because I played and because I have this journey with the national team and we had this success, the respect I get allows me to be in conversations that I don't think, like, let's say an average woman who was participating in sports.
But it could have broken you though at the time easily, couldn't it?
I didn't. I was like it was like water off a duck's back for me. I didn't care. I think if it didn't suit me or it didn't help me, I let it go.
It's so interesting that you dealt with that kind of abuse, might be too strong a word, but that kind of mickey taking and harshness as a kid. And then the irony that you ended up in this team that the whole country was obsessed with between sort of the late 90s really up until that amazing win in 1999. The irony of that is so interesting, that all those kids that made fun of you 20 years later would have been cheering for you at the Rose Bowl for sure. It's an amazing full circle that I don't think certainly wouldn't happen, that can't happen in England, which is a really interesting observation. I just want to talk about your journey to the US Women's National Team. At what point, because of course over here college is a huge thing, which in England we don't have. There is no option for a female footballer to go for 4 years to a college.
Yeah, there is. She comes here to go
to college. True. Well, that is true.
But she comes to play for Santa Clara University. That's what she
But
does.
it's so interesting. In England, if you're a really good footballer, you go into a professional club at an early age. Right. You don't go to college at 18 until you're 22. Okay, sometimes they leave early if they're going to make it quicker, and get a life experience, but maybe slightly less of a football experience. At what point in your journey did you think, was it school or college, where you thought, I'm going to be a professional footballer?
I didn't really think about it until after the first Women's World Cup, which
was in 1991.
91, and that's because I was playing adult league soccer, which was the gap between playing collegiate and playing on the national team, because at that time there weren't these big opportunities, there weren't regular matches. Like honestly, if I was on the national team for 5 years, we might have had 10 games over those times. Like there wasn't very many matches to be played. So right after I graduated, maybe a year or two, I took an opportunity to play in Japan for a year. And at that time, I had been cut from the national team, and I was in kind of this limbo between 91 and 96. And I went to Japan, which was honestly, I think, the best thing I could have ever done. I think it's the experience that college brings to a player too, which is, it was a time to mature. It was learning a different language, but not just a language of like what the people speak, but how do they play football? How does it resonate in their culture? You know, what does it mean to them? You know, how can I assimilate into that environment and be better? And so for me, it was the greatest opportunity, one that was really not looked upon very favorably.
When you say it wasn't looked upon favourably, I was just going to ask you about sort of people around you, parents. Because you're choosing a sporting path that's got no real financial outcome for you, where you're going to basically need to take another job, or you're going to make it hard for yourself. Did they try and put you off, members of your family, against this path?
No, my parents were remarkable. They saw that I had a passion for this. They absolutely fell in love with it too, to be quite frank. They went everywhere. You know, they would go to Australia, China, like they were incredible.
This episode of It's Called Soccer is in association with Allstate. Now, some people just know they could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance by checking Allstate first. It is always smart to check first, and I've learned my lesson the hard way with this. Like when you don't check the stadium restrictions before a big game and end up having to toss the food you brought along with you for the kids, or you forgot the same game how quickly the weather turns and you didn't bring your jumper with you. Or that time you forget to check that you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game and then they won't let you in. And what if you book that big vacation away before you check the date of the cup final? That's a problem. So yeah, checking first, always smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You are in good hands with Allstate. This content is intended for audiences in the US only. Savings vary, terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
After the World Cup in '91, I had multiple players, multiple teammates who retired because they were older than I was, and they were more in a situation that they needed to have.
They couldn't afford it, basically.
A successful career.
Yeah.
Not not soccer.
Yeah.
And so they probably could have come back to the national team, but they didn't see that it was going to be changing and didn't have the time. They didn't have the runway.
What were you getting paid back then? What was the first check that you took for?
You want to hear this? You're going to be astounded by this. The first check I remember was when we won the World Cup in '91.
Yeah.
I went back to college at Santa Clara to finish my degree, and I got a card in the mail from U.S. Soccer, and you know it has a U.S. Soccer crest, and you open it up and you're excited, and it says congratulations on this winning this wonderful. This is obviously not verbatim, you know, but the sentiment was, we're so proud and we're so grateful. Here's your check, $500. I thought I had won the lottery.
For winning the World Cup?
Yeah.
US Soccer, you owe Brandi and her teammates some money.
It was about 5 years after that, wasn't it? 96, when the Olympic Games came to Atlanta.
For the first time that women's soccer was ever in the Olympics.
Right, and America won gold. And that was the time where the Mia Hamms and you and that generation started to just infiltrate into the American consciousness, I think. And then it led perfectly up to the 1999 Women's World Cup in the United States. And that, Brandi, is why you are on panels like you were with Gary and Tom Brady and Serena Williams, because of what you did in that moment under that pressure. For anyone who doesn't know, they do know, everyone knows who's watching this, that final in the Rose Bowl, the final was 0-0.
Right.
Extra time?
Yes.
0-0.
And that extra time was very interesting because at that time it was golden goal.
Oh, was it?
And, and one of the most monumental plays of the whole tournament was Christine Lilly. We gave up a corner. Their attacker out-jumped our defender, and Brianna Scurry, if you don't know, is like phenomenal. She could leap tall buildings in a single bound. Like she could extend those arms, and her hands were so big, and she could get things up in the corner. But this one was going past her, and Christine jumped behind and saved it off the line.
That's
so
right.
we wouldn't be having this conversation without Christine Lilly. I love you, Christine.
And then it went to penalty shootout, and it got all the way to the winning penalty. Now, Gary, 13 years ago was the first time I met Brandi. I interject myself here because I have to tell you the story. So Brandi and I worked together at the 2011 Women's World Cup for ESPN, broadcasted it all across Germany for like 4 weeks. And we spent a lot of time together going from city to city to city. And there was one random day, I think we were in Berlin in the hotel. We had a day off. And so that was 2011. So what is that? 12 years since the World Cup. So still not that long ago. And I said to her, look, I know you'll have been asked this a million times, but can you just take me to the beginning all the way through? And she did the whole thing. Not only did she tell me every detail, she got up in the hotel room and I made her reenact the winning penalty, which foot it was, where she put it, the whole thing. It was one of the most, I was sat there thinking, I've got an audience with Brandi Chastain. This is like, people would pay for this. So do that, you don't have to reenact it. But for Gary and for everyone watching, that penalty and that moment really changed everything in this country, and it changed everything for you. Just tell the story again of the moment that you knew you were up next.
Well, leading into going to the center of the field, as you have experience, you go to the sideline, you're getting water, you're probably an ice towel because it's 120 degrees in the Rose Bowl. And everybody's just kind of taking a moment, to decompress from what had just happened, 120 minutes of incredible football back and forth. And then our assistant coach came up to me, her name is Lauren Gregg, and she said, okay, you want to take a penalty? And I kind of drew back. I remember thinking, why are you asking me? Because in the run of play, I would have been the person to take the penalty.
So you were the penalty taker?
Yeah, I was
Number
the penalty.
Okay.
Michelle Akers and I, but Michelle was out of the game. And so I said, yeah, of course. Yeah, and she goes, okay, good. And then she wandered off. Again, drinking, whatever, and then next thing, Tony DeCicco, our coach, our late coach, comes up and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, okay, you're gonna take a penalty. I said, yep. I talked to Lauren, no problem, I got it. He goes, okay, you're gonna take it with your left foot. And it was like he ran away. Shoo! Didn't think twice about it. Okay.
Hang on. Just for anyone who doesn't know, are you right-footed or left-footed?
No, I'm gonna get to it.
Okay, get to it.
I'm gonna get to it. So then we go to the middle. And because it's like one of those really intense moments, like I missed the order. I didn't hear where my name was in the order. But then we got out there and I was like, well, I don't want to mess with anybody else's process. So I'm not going to ask. So they'll tell me when it's my turn. So, right? So part of what you need to know about being there for that penalty kick was earlier in the year we had played China in the Algarve and we had a penalty, and when I took the ball from the referee I placed it down and I looked up and the goalkeeper was standing right there, and she is awesome, quirky character, really fun-loving personality, but she smiled and winked and I was like, what the hell is going on? Like totally got me out of sorts. And she went back. Referee blows the whistle, I hit the ball, it hits the crossbar, goes out. We end up losing that game. So the only thing going through my head at this time is don't look at the goalkeeper. Don't look at the goalkeeper. 90,000 people couldn't have been any more quiet. Like it was like deafening. So Brianna Scurry makes a save on the third kicker. I knew we've won. I'm extremely confident, no problem. So I go up, I take the ball, I don't look up, I place it down, I back up, I tap my toe, I wait for the whistle. And I approach it as I would every other day. And I'm gonna put it in the back of the net, and I take it with my left foot. So Rebecca's asking, am I right or left-footed? I'm both, I would say. I play on the left side. I started as a striker and I ended as a left back, but I had never taken a penalty with my left foot in a game before. And so for him to ask me, like people like yourself who kind of have been in these big games were like, no way in hell would I ever do that.
Why would the coach ask you?
Because,
I'll tell you to say it with left foot.
So the extra caveat that was really unique about this time in women's soccer, which doesn't happen any longer, unfortunately, I think, is that our practices were open to everybody. They could come and watch all day long. We would meet the people, we would just
Right.
hang out. It was very, we were selling women's football.
Yeah.
We wanted them to come to see what it was like to be a part of this
So there were no
team.
secrets, basically.
No secrets. No secrets. And so, in practice we would do it right and left foot, but for him, I think as a coach you worry more because you have no control. And so this was his way of saying like, hey, this is a good plan in this moment. And I trusted Tony because he's the one who brought me back to the national team. If he said jump off that, I would be, I'm going right now. So I trusted him because he changed my career. He changed my position. He brought me back to the team. He wanted to change the way we played as a team. And to me, he was setting me up for success. And he always had been. And so I said, why not?
Did you have the presence of mind in that moment as you walked up to think this could change so many people's lives if I score this? No.
No. Man, are you kidding me? I was thinking, obviously, listen, leading up to that match, also, FIFA, thank you, had the fourth place game right before on the same field. And then Jennifer Lopez came on. And because this game went into penalty kicks, the concert got pushed back, which meant we didn't get to warm up on the field. So now you're playing in the biggest game of your life and you're running in the tunnels of the Rose Bowl, which is historically one of our most important stadiums in this country. Like the history that is there, the importance of its existence is truly, it's critical to sport. But here we are, the water's dripping, the mold and the mildew and to me, that is like what sport is about. Yeah. You're gonna have to be flexible, you're gonna have to be agile. And that's why this team in particular, I believe was ready to win a World Cup because we didn't have it easy. Nobody picked up our cleats, nobody moved the goals, nobody filled the water jugs and carried them out. We did all of that. And that was a part of our character and a part of the culture of that team.
Did you recognise at the time when this happened that it's the first time that I ever remember women's football actually being projected globally? I remember it at the time. Were you aware of that at the time?
I would say to some degree because we were doing shows like David Letterman, and that was like, he had right or wrongly given us the name of Babe City. Right? Babe City FC, probably not great, but also we were on probably the #1 show in the country at the time. And so things were changing. Yeah. We knew that. The Olympics in '96, again, that was the non-digital age. So everything wasn't streaming and you couldn't watch everything in that game. Final was not broadcast.
Wow.
Only the celebration got shown. That really was the driver to the potential of what could happen in '99 because that stadium was 75,000 people and not one ticket was available.
How much do you think your celebration of the winning penalty helped spread what Gary was talking about? Actually, that image, front page of Sports Illustrated, in a museum, that sports bra somewhere in New York, I think. How much do you think that image actually helped carry this wave of excitement and interest?
I think a long way, and not intentionally so, to be honest with you. It was very organic, authentic, in the moment. You've won many championships, so you know that your emotions, you're not quite sure how you will respond. What I love about that moment is that it resonates differently with different people. And so every time I hear someone say, I watched that game or I was at that game, I stop and I say, please tell me all the things, the why, who, where, why, what were you doing? Where were you in your life? What did it mean to you? That's fascinating to me, that 25 years later, I'm still having those conversations and they're still as present for people as they were then.
We were on the plane yesterday and somebody stops. You can't go anywhere with this woman in this country without somebody stopping you and wanting to talk to you about that change in your life. Just talk us through, say, the difference between 1998 and the year 2000.
Yeah.
Did you earn more than $500?
Just a few.
Was that the biggest change?
Just a few. But not very much. Honestly, it wasn't.
When did it change then? When did it
drastic.
change? When did the professionalism change, and when did the actual investment and money change?
Yeah, it was growing, Gary. And when you were thinking about money, we're not thinking about a lot of money.
No.
We're talking maybe 10,000, maybe 20,000. It's not that much.
You would have managed to make hay while the sun shined outside of the game, following on from 1999, 100%,
right? Without a doubt. It changed the trajectory of my life. It changed the people I got to meet, like yourselves. And, I could talk about soccer in a way that now was, people were like, okay, tell me more. And they'd lean in. Yeah. Like before it would be like, foreign sport, not interested. Like, why are you doing that? But it allowed me to sit on the panel with you and to share the story of, what it was like to be a female in a non-traditional, non-American sport with really almost no support. Now, I give US Soccer a lot of credit. They actually were ahead of the curve. And because of that, we had a team that could win World Cups and Olympic gold medals. And they absolutely had everything to do with that. And they are also drivers now of the change that needs to happen. And one of my former teammates who was a young teenager that I took care of, Cindy Parlow-Cohn, is now the president of US Soccer. So things are definitely, we're going in the right direction. And, history, history is something that when you talk about like the men's World Cup or the men's national team, will they win a World Cup? History is not on our side. No. If you look at the landscape of the rest of the world, and we're ahead of the curve. Yeah. So we are pushing.
Well, you think about the English women's team, and they only really got that same moment only 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I've never been able to ask someone that obviously lives in the US. The US women's national team moment came in 1999, but the English women's national team moment came literally 2022, 3 years later. How do you view that, and how has that happened? I mean, I'm obviously from England, so I'm looking at that and thinking, what were we doing in our country for that length of time?
Women were playing football like for some little club team, not being taken seriously, training on their own, doing whatever necessary to survive.
Is it because we're too obsessed with the men's game in England?
I don't know if too obsessed is
but that's where the energy is.
I think you're a traditional men's football culture, and that's not bad. But the beauty of the world is that it has so much more. The reason why women's football had a hard time coming up is that people who loved it over here didn't want it to be different, or they didn't want it to change. And they don't have to. It can still be. This is just another option. This is another chance to watch football, maybe even in a different light than you watch it over here. And there's going to be things that you love over here that you don't really like over here, and there'll be both. And so, I was just, as you do, Gary, you speak to a lot of people in a lot of corporate environments, and talking about women in a lot of non-traditional places. The only places that women were really encouraged to be a part of was being a home, a caregiver, a homemaker, a secretary, a nurse. Like, these were appropriate places for women to be. And I was just at a tech company doing a Fem AI, women in STEM and women in AI. And I mean, there's companies putting in tens of millions of dollars into, we need to know more about the other side and what they have to offer, because we're missing out on half of the world. So I believe sports is driving that conversation, because we know that 94% of C-suite executive females come through sports, and that is critical. And that's why it's important for any person out there who has a young girl, is to allow her to get onto the pitch or onto the court or into the pool, wherever it is, so that she can experience the same things that my brother, who I remember when he was like 8 and I was 10, we were down at the playground and he made a basket and he celebrated like he had won the world championship. And I was like, how does he have the confidence to believe he's so good? Nobody told me that. you know? And so I think that's where we are, and that's now today for these women who, you know, obviously the bottom line is it's business. This is a business. The folks who have invested in Bay FC, our owners, 6th Street, would not have done that if they didn't believe that there was a future in the business side. And so that's where we are. And there wasn't a belief in the future of women's sport earlier beyond, I think, you know, women's tennis has been a shining example, and deservedly so. But that's really where we are, that this is a business endeavor, and women's soccer, I'm proud to say, is, along with WNBA, we are leading the charge.
I think there's just been a review done in England around women's soccer, carried out by Carragher, one of the obviously international players. And what are the sort of, if you could say what 3 things need to change, or would you change to actually make the game more successful? What would they be?
The game itself, on men's and women's?
Women's game.
Just women's game.
In terms of just generally the approach towards it, obviously there isn't equal pay, there isn't equal facilities, there is a struggle to get appropriate sponsorship levels into the women's game. Manchester United, for instance, I'm going to use my club, Manchester United. They have a women's team. I think they only had one maybe in the last 10 years. But the club gets sponsors, and that's all deemed to go to probably the men's side, and then they basically will give a pot of money, a budget towards the women's team. But they've lost, obviously, Mary Earps in the last sort of, they've lost Russo, they've lost Earps, they've lost a number of players through basically going to other clubs. What would the game need, just generally the women's game, if you could say 3 things? What if you were doing a review for global women's football? What would you?
Well,
what would you do?
I think you named off 3 that right away. I mean, obviously, the budgets of these, you know, for how can we have a professional environment when we're not paying a wage that is above, like, almost poverty? Like, that's where we were. So we're not asking for what Ronaldo's making, you know, but we're asking for a comparable salary or a salary cap. We have a salary cap, which is a non-traditional thing.
You have a salary. No, we don't have salary caps in the UK because of I think employment law. But you have salary caps in the women's game.
Yes, we do. But it's increasing.
Okay.
So the board is. It's going to increase over the years, and so that's a positive. We've gotten away with what we had was a college draft, which is a kind of a historical American thing for all sports. And now the players are going to be a part of where they play. They don't just get shipped off to wherever it is. What's
the budget then? What would the budget be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's not that much. I think it might be $2.5 million. Yeah. Which is not very much.
But you have to have a product to support it, right? You can't just give people huge pay rises and not have a product to support that pay rise.
Sure.
So 100%. Maybe it's just time.
Yeah, it is time. I think there's a formula. The formula will have time as a variable, money will be a variable, talent will be available, location will be a variable, sponsorship will be a variable, media will be a variable. There's a lot of facilities, but those are changing as well. We have just announced we're building a training facility on Treasure Island, which is literally, we are Bay FC, we are literally in the Bay.
Treasure Island is the coolest place ever.
Sounds like somewhere I need to go and live.
It's got a 360 view of the Bay, and that will be our new home come 2027.
And what would the spend on that be, a training facility?
Yeah, it's probably in the tens of millions. Yeah.
Wow. So a big investment into facilities.
Big. And that's what we have to do. Kansas City Current is the first club to make a women's only football stadium. And so that's where we're going.
That was one of Karen's comments, I think, in her report. She said the women's game is homeless. We have no stadiums.
Yeah.
There are no stadiums designated to the women's team.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I go back and forth. My core belief is, here in America, I am destined to support soccer. not men's soccer, not women's soccer, soccer. And so for me, I feel that the spaces should be ubiquitous and that they should be able to welcome a men's football team and a women's team.
A joint stadium, basically, in terms of what you're looking at.
Like, for better or for worse, I think, I don't know, I want to hear what you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say the difference, though, is that in England, there's such a feeling, it's so different because the men's game was there first and has been there so long and is so deep-seated and so deep-rooted that it feels like the men's stadium, even though Man United women's team play there or Arsenal ladies play at the Emirates, it still doesn't feel like their stadium.
Right.
That's the difference because you guys both started at the same time.
Yes.
So it feels a bit like you could do it a bit more easily.
And I will say that I agree with you. And I would also love to invite you to come to one of our games, and I would love for you to come to one of our games because we do share a stadium with the San Jose Earthquakes, and it doesn't feel the same at all.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
It does not feel the same at all, and in fact, fans have said, like, this is such an amazing experience I'm having. I haven't had this experience before, and that's not saying anything about men's.
What crowds are you getting?
It's like we sold out the first one 18,000+ and then 15,000.
And you've been around for one season.
This is not even a whole season.
That's incredible.
Wow.
And this is the third iteration, as you said, of women's soccer in this country. This will be the last one, won't it? I mean, this is it.
Yes, it
got
will
it right.
Be. It will be. Yes.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. I want to say to, why it's been successful in our area. Part of the reason is historically, 40% of the national team have come through our area. So they either were born in our, like Naomi Girma and I are from San Jose.
Basically, hotbed of talent.
Or they've come through the collegiate ranks in that area. Yeah. And so we have a big influence. We have a lot of, again, like I said, we've been around since the NASL, so we've had George Best and we've seen football for a long time, and so we feel good about it, and we want it to exist in our community, so that we have a leg up, to be honest with you, in that way.
What have you made of an English coach being appointed as the head coach of the US women's team?
I have no problem with that. I mean, I will say it out loud, and I'm hoping that I will one day be able to be a part of coaching our youth national teams or our women's national team. I've been gifted so many incredible experiences and lessons, and I've played all the positions, and I want to give that back. But when Emma came along, I feel like it was the right time with the right team for the right reason.
What do you mean by that?
So I think that this was a team that was going in a direction that was really not in a positive way. It had key pieces, but just not functioning in the manner that was going to allow it to be successful. Like, I will take Brazil women's national team. No one would refute if I said they have probably the most talent in all the positions in all the players. Like, I'm sure you experienced too, playing against Brazil. But they don't have the structure behind them to make them a world champion just yet. And that was kind of where we were kind of going. And I think that we needed to literally a tourniquet. And we needed to stop what was happening, and we needed to reroute the direction we were going. And I think because Emma has some roots here, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard her say, like,
She's made in America.
I was made in America. Yeah. And that's so foreign for me to hear someone not from here, especially English, to say they were born and made here in the footballing sense. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, I got an opportunity. That's America. Mm. She got an opportunity to be a part of football in a way that she didn't have a chance before. And then when she went back, she had the biggest chance. And she created an environment and a team that stood alone, right? And now there's more competition, Man United, Man City, we see it now. It's bubbling up. But I think because she had that experience and she won championships and she's been around the block, she understands what it's like to be a player who's not getting time or getting some time or needs a lot of attention or doesn't need attention. And she's just has a great personality to be able to manage that and still be confident and humble with who she is. And I think that resonated with our players in a way for them to be responsible for the outcomes of the matches and not just looking to the sideline like, did I do what you told me to do? It's like there was some freedom, there was some breathing that could be done with structure, of course, but it allowed for them to shine in a way that they hadn't been shining.
Before we let you go, we can't, without talking a bit more about BFC, was it your chance to get back into the game in a big way when this came along, this opportunity?
I'm not so sure I was thinking of it like that, Rebecca, to be honest. I'm a hometown girl. I grew up 15 minutes from the stadium. I believe in the values and the virtues of this game. I believe it brings us closer together rather than separating us. I think it gives the opportunity for open conversation. We can disagree on formations or players, but we can respect one another in this space. So that was really important for me. I think doing it with the three other co-founders, Ali Wagner, Danielle Slayton, Leslie Osborne, as former Santa Clara Broncos and former U.S. Women's National Team members, we knew the specialness of our community. And so that was really the initial, and then I think we said, wow, this is a business that can grow. And when we met some female executives and, let's say like women in startups, and they were like, money will be the least of your worries. And we never had the money be least of our worries. We were like, how can that be true? And then we found it out to be, that's not the hardest thing.
Wow.
The business of football is hard. Putting on a match every day or every week is hard. Choosing the right players is hard. Managing those players and getting the most out of them as many days of the week as we can, especially on match day, is hard. But we've done hard before. And our community is about innovation and ideation and creativity and changing the world. And that's who lives in our community. So that's why we thought we could do it.
What role are you playing at the moment in the club?
I'm an ambassador. I get to come and I get to spread the joy. No,
she wants to. She definitely wants to. On a Saturday night.
You can't be a co-founder and owner and not interfere a little bit.
No,
you're talking to one.
No, I'm a huge supporter. I'm at every game that I can be home. I am all BFC all day, every day. I want the best for the players. I need them to know that I'm there if they need anything. I'm supporting them. But our standards are high.
Yeah.
We are no nonsense, and we don't mind saying it's playoffs.
Yeah.
We have to get the playoffs.
Are you sacking managers?
And then, no, I'm not a part of that. I'm not any part of that. But we're playoffs. We want to be. That's going to be our mindset.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in that mindset, I know that American sports does not have relegation, which I think is problematic for soccer. I think it's problematic for all of sports, to be honest with you, because no one should ever believe that, we'll get it next year, or we'll be there again. Like that's not how we should be feeling. We should be feeling like we are working today to make it to the playoffs, so we stay in this position and we hold this position and we win a championship.
Would you bring relegation in though? Because that's not. Obviously we have relegation in England, and to be honest with you, we think it's the most important aspect of our game because there has to be consequence for losing. Yeah. You can't just have a case where you basically there's no. Obviously you can finish lower down the league and you get less money, but there has to be that fear, that consequence, that sort of jeopardy.
Well, I think that also is a part of kind of your culture.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear. And there's a lot of disappointment.
We're very fearful people.
Yeah, because you don't like penalty kicks. You don't like penalty kicks. And,
you don't like anything. Walking around shaking.
There is a little bit of that. That I've met through my friends. They've told me about it. Not you.
It felt like you were talking to me then, Brandi.
No, not you. But I honestly believe that why not have that opportunity we have now another women's professional league that is going on at the same time, and could do this.
Yeah.
And I think my mindset is, how great can you be? Like, I'm not fearful of the bottom.
No.
I'm not fearful of that because I'm working every day to be great. And that, if we had that type of mindset, we would be better.
Yeah.
That would
the
be
whole
amazing.
thing would be better.
That would be amazing if the USL Women's League and the NWSL formed a tier. That would be incredible, because it would show the jeopardy. It would show everybody, I think, in men's soccer in this country, what needs to be done, which we can do another whole podcast on how on earth we get Major League Soccer
I'm always
to do
conscious
it.
of coming over to a country and saying this is how you should do it because it's the same as ours. But
Well,
my point is, if
Well, it's not
you're
just the same as ours, is it? It's the same as everybody.
Yeah, but if you're feeling that as well,
Yeah, it's
obviously
interesting.
live it. That's interesting.
Well, I just think that, we're trying to get on the same calendar as the rest of the world. Like, we're opposite. And so I feel like we do things our way, which are fine. Like, I'm not bashing us. I think it's really, we have great sporting history and great tradition. In football, we are probably the only place that doesn't do it like the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And that hurts us. And that hurts when I hear you talking about what are our chances for our men's national team to win a World Cup. That hurts our chances because we're not in sync with the rest of the world. And so we're constantly trying to catch up in things. And so I think it could benefit us. And we shouldn't be afraid of that.
If you could get that sorted by the time we next
Yeah,
talk,
yeah,
that'd
you
be great.
got it,
Relegation in the women's game, brilliant. We'll end it there. From a $500 check to winning the Women's World Cup to co-founder of a brand new club, Brandi Chastain, you've done it all. And we're so grateful that you joined us on It's Called Soccer. Thank you so much.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I love you.
Thank you.
Always so lovely to catch up with the wonderful Brandi Chastain. Don't forget, the regular episode will be out next Wednesday with another special guest. Until then, have a great week. Bye for now.